Welcome back to Hello Nigeria. It's time for our top story. Now, according to the World Health Organization, as of 2017, the 19th of March, there was a total of 1,407 suspected cases of meningitis and a reported number of 211 deaths in about 40 local government areas in Nigeria. Now, these statistics might look like they're little to some people, but they are actually quite staggering. And here we often have the ostrich in the sand mentality, where we think it's not so much of a big deal until it spirals out of control. Now, today, looking at meningitis. What is meningitis? What are the causes? And how can we deal with it? We have two professionals coming to talk to us about this. Now, we have Professor Wale Sulaimon, who is a medical doctor and also a professor of neurosurgery and spine surgery. He's the founder and director of RNZ Global. He's on my extreme left. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you so much for having me. And on my immediate left, we have Mrs. Patricia Sulaimon, who is also a nurse and a co-founder and director of RNZ Global. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much
for having
us.
All right, so I think the first question I'd ask would be the fact that here in Nigeria, we pay so much attention to issues like HIV, cancer, but are we doing enough to create awareness about meningitis?
Well, I think so. I think that, you know, it's something that kind of comes on. First of all, thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk about something as important as meningitis. I think can be a public health hazard when it happens. And oftentimes, there's so many things you can do before it actually happens, which is vaccination. So it's actually a public health issue that every government around the world, including Nigeria, should take seriously and vaccinate people to prevent it before it happens. But when it does happen, I think it can be something that can cause significant sequelae, which we'll talk about later on.
All right. Now, you've spoken about some of the things that would qualify as that, but what are the manifestations of meningitis? So we see a number of people, the people watching, once you hear meningitis, it sounds like a death sentence, and it's such a grave illness, which it is. But what are some of the manifestations of meningitis, Mrs. Sulaimon?
Yes, so there are various symptoms that one may present with, beginning with some people present with neck stiffness. Some also have some symptoms in the gastrointestinal region, like stomach cramps, diarrhea, weakness, things of that sort. So unfortunately, it's not something that's really specific, but if some person presents with those symptoms, they should immediately contact a clinic or a healthcare professional to get checked out to ensure that they're not presenting with meningitis.
Can it lead to death?
So, I mean, so meningitis, so the brain is kind of contained in a rigid structure, which is the skull. Then underneath the skull is the lining around the brain, which is the meninges. There are three different layers. So, and that becomes inflamed. When it becomes inflamed, it can affect both the brain itself and the structures around the brain. That's the meningitis. It's just an infection of the lining around the brain. And so with that, you have some manifestation that has to do with the central nervous system, which is the function of the brain and the spinal cord. So people can become sleepy. You can have issues related to having seizures. They can have headaches. They actually present with headaches and sometimes with neck stiffness. So when you see somebody who's having some non-specific symptoms, but they also have a manifestation of changes in their ability to stay alert and stay interactive, they're sleepy, they have neck stiffness, they're vomiting, they have diarrhea, those are the things. A combination of neurologic symptoms and generalized weakness and other symptoms are the things you look for.
And if not treated, can it lead to death?
So, absolutely, if you don't recognize it on time, and these are the non-specific symptoms, but the way to diagnose is to get a sample of the spinal fluid, which is the fluid that percolates around the spinal cord and the brain. When you get a sample of the spinal fluid, you can test for the cause of which can be different types of microorganisms.
All right, now thank you so much for, you mentioned microorganisms and things. How can one contract meningitis? And is it a communicable disease? Can it be easily spread? So for instance, when we have brain diseases like brain conditions like epilepsy, it's said that it's not communicable. So how about meningitis? When you talk about, is it a viral infection or how is it spread?
Very fantastic question. So, well, first of all, there are three different types of meningitis. You can get it, one is bacterial meningitis, which is through different types of bacteria. viral meningitis, which is from a virus, and fungal meningitis. So bacterial meningitis is the most serious type of meningitis, which can oftentimes, if left untreated or if it's found out too late, can lead to death. Sorry, what was the other question you had?
With regards to it being communicable.
Fantastic. And so it's spread through respiratory secretions, so cough, sputum, things of that sort. So it's critical to take universal precautions, such as wearing gloves or masks or even gowning if one suspects that they're dealing with somebody who does have meningitis. So again, the most important thing is finding out, getting the diagnosis as early as possible. Yeah.
So which other people, like we find that there are certain people that are more predisposed to having meningitis. We don't really have cases as much in Lagos as we have in the northern parts of Nigeria. So is there anything about the weather that also contributes to meningitis?
Yeah, so just to kind of add to what she just said, I think, again, I said at the beginning that you can prevent this. So I think the most critical thing is to get people vaccinated. So if you have a good community health system, you have good public health system where you can reach people that are potentially at risk, you can actually prevent them getting meningitis. But the predisposition, I think there are other types of meningitis besides what she talked about in terms of those are more rare stuff. People that have cancer can get meningitis. People that have tuberculosis can get meningitis. But those are rare. But in terms of the ones that we just talked about, people that are immunocompromised are more prone to have meningitis, like HIV/AIDS. People that are on chemotherapy or radiotherapy for cancer can be. Even people with diabetes, if it's not controlled.
All right, so it actually leverages, for better use of word, on other diseases that reduces your immune system or downgrades your immune system and then manifests in that way. Are those so? For instance, like you mentioned, there's some conditions that their treatment or the presence of that condition means that your immune system is lowered. Does it mean then meningitis can easily set in?
It just means that you're more at risk for develling it.
All right, okay, all right.
I had asked you earlier.
About weather?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
So I think a lot of it has to do with living conditions, and I think there's a lot of things that we do in our culture and now we live in our communities that may have played a significant role in the transmission of meningitis when it does occur. There's been talks about the weather, the heat, the wind, and the different conditions from different parts of the country that made predisposed in the north. I'm not sure whether that's been carefully studied, but when you have an outbreak, what do? Do you have processes in place that actually make sure that it doesn't spread? How do you quarantine people? How do you make sure people that are at risk are vaccinated to prevent them from getting it? So I think it's more of a process. Even in the worst conditions around the world, if you have the right process in place, you can control a catastrophe. Right. I think it's more related to that. I'm not sure, Pat, what do you think?
No, that's exactly right. The process is, the key is vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate.
How about age? Is age a risk factor?
Yes, so young people, those who are, I believe, 5 and under are at greater risk, and also the elderly are at greater risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, so
young people and the elderly.
Yes.
You've talked so much about vaccinate. So let's talk about the vaccines. Is it a one-shot in a lifetime vaccination, or do you have to renew over a period of time? And can babies actually get the meningitis vaccine from the point of birth?
So it's given at the age of 11 and 18, if I'm not mistaken. So it's you take it 2 times, and once you get it, then you're pretty much vaccinated for life.
For life.
So it's preventable.
Yes. It is completely preventable.
So part of the work that I would want to imagine that health professionals like yourselves would want to do is to raise awareness and to get as many people being vaccinated. And like Olive mentioned, okay, like you said, 11 and 18. I don't know how many people have actually been vaccinated when it comes to meningitis.
I don't think I've been vaccinated, come to think of it, because I can't remember ever taking the meningitis vaccine. So.
Yeah. I think it's a choice. I think, like, for instance, some people coming from the United States or UK going to what they consider sort of endemic area, meningitis is not that widespread around the world. So it's a choice. If you feel like you're going to an area where you could be exposed to it, it's better to be vaccinated or not. It's still a choice. It's not mandated. But there's some pockets in the country where we see there's repeated episodes of, those are the areas where we need to go in and aggressively vaccinate people.
That's right.
Because we don't have enough healthcare facilities to manage all those epidemics when they happen. We can see the mortality is very high, and so I think this is something that is incumbent upon the local government, the state government, and the federal government to really take it seriously, because otherwise, when it happens, when you don't identify it on time and you don't treat it on time, the sequelae can be very bad.
All right, brilliant. Now, you've talked about what to do to prevent it. What can you do to deal with it or to treat it when you've already been diagnosed with with having meningitis? What are some of the precautions? What should be your immediate response once you notice the symptoms or you've been diagnosed?
Okay, so essentially, again, it depends on the type of meningitis, but generally it's dealing with the symptoms. And so if one has a bacterial meningitis, they would be treated with antibiotics. If it's a viral meningitis, they would be treated with let's say Wazobia, which would be an antiviral medication. And if it's a fungal meningitis, they would be treated with an antifungal. Mm-hmm. So again, it all depends on the type of meningitis that one is diagnosed with. Mm-hmm. And then also, of course, we would hope that it hasn't progressed to the point where somebody does have neurological deficits, then they would have to be treated for those particular neurological symptoms.
So one of the things that happens when you have inflammation around the brain is you can get brain swelling. And then when you have brain swelling, the pressure within the brain can go up. When that goes up, that can lead to seizures. And so it's one of the things we have to be watchful of is seizures. And then sometimes they will need anti-seizure medications and things like that. It's mostly supportive therapy when it's viral infection. But when it's tuberculosis, bacterial, fungal, then you really give them the medication to treat the infection. The key is to try and get a lumbar tap, which is taking the spinal fluid and then...
I was going to ask, how does that work? Because usually when we want to do tests and they tell you, you already know what to expect. So for those who want to do a HIV test, you know that they would most likely pierce your thumb and take the blood after piercing your thumb. We know that when you want to do like a malaria test, they will take your blood. But you're saying they're taking fluid from the spine. Am I going to have something being pierced in my spine? Oh, no, it's the person. Let me be a Nigerian. The person is going to have a needle being pierced in their spine.
Yeah, I think yes. But typically we do it in a way where the patient can lay on their back and then you sit behind the back, you numb the area. And then there's a special needle that we do to try and get in between the bone to get into the spinal fluid. And you take some of it out. If it's numbed well, it's well tolerated and something that we do frequently for patients that need to have it done.
Scary.
Wow, that's interesting. So in addition to environment and age, are there some precautions that people can take and apart from obviously, or once you take the vaccine, is that it? You don't need to do anything extra to prevent?
Again, I think, first of all, I think, as we all know, healthy living is very critical, and eating the balanced diet, exercise, things that will boost your immune system are very critical because some people will actually contract the infection and not get sick because their immune system is so strong. Like we talked about, people that have HIV/AIDS or on chemotherapy, their immune is compromised. So they may contract, two people may contract the infection, but the person who is healthy may not get symptoms.
That's right.
So because the immune system will fight it. But if you're immunocompromised, then you really become to manifest symptoms. So I think healthy living, exercise, eating some fruits and eating things that will boost your immune system.
I like that you mentioned boosting your immune system because at the start of the show, we had talked about foods that can help to build up your immune system. We talked about yogurts and vitamin C. Now, my question is, in terms of building your immune system, beyond foods and fruits, are there medication one takes to help them? Can a normal person who isn't sick, I just feel like now I want to build up my immune system for future reference. I don't want to have any breakdown. Beyond fruits and foods, can multivitamins and food supplements help as well with regards to building the immune system? And are they necessary?
Of course they can, yes, absolutely. They help. But again, if you're eating a well-balanced diet and a healthy diet, there's really no need to take supplements because within the regular diet or fantastic diet, all of those extra vitamins are within those foods. So
That's really good to hear. So it's, I mean, what we basically preach on the show, which is increase your intake of fruits and vegetables, what the kind of food that you eat, because it's actually medicine, you know, and many people don't see it that way because, like you mentioned, it helps to boost your immune system and prevent some you know, illnesses, some diseases. Even when you've contracted them, they're not able to fully, you know, come manifest. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having
We've
me.
been very enlightened with regards to meningitis. We hope that as individuals we can do more and that our government also helps to do more with regards to spreading the message about meningitis. And we don't wait until there's an outbreak before we start running up and down, which is what we often do most of the time. How can people follow you on social media?
Well, we have a website. It's rnzglobal.com.
Okay.
And that just gives a bit of information of what we do.
Lovely.
And,
So the RNZ is a hospital development operations and management company, and we get involved in a lot of different things. So
All right. So if you're interested in speaking with them and being a part of what they do, you know, seeking their services, visit their website at rnzglobal.com. That's www.rnzglobal.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to
To enjoy more of these our Ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love am.